com. Bob Pollock is with us, Extension Service, and our visit with him brought to you by Marcus and Mack, voted best personal injury law firm. Best of Indiana County contest, Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Liking that rain this morning, huh?
Very much so, very much.
Yeah, we've had some this week. I was reading an interesting stat the other day that even though it's been really, really dry since the beginning of June, we're still like 4 inches ahead on the entire year.
Yeah, for the year.
In terms of moisture.
Although, yeah.
You can still walk across the creek without getting your feet wet, but...
Yes. Unless you step in a puddle.
But still, we're doing okay.
We're hanging
for as dry as it's been.
Yeah, we're hanging in there. Of course, they only measure that in certain spots. So,
yeah,
there's spots that, because if you drive south, down to Blairsville and down that area, it's a lot drier than.
Yeah,
things don't look as nice down there as they do as you go north and some other spots. So.
The law of areas and averages can be deceiving.
Yes,
and well, you've said that before. It is about the amount of rain you're getting, but it's also about the timing and where you're getting the rain.
Absolutely. That
will help determine how your lawn's going to do, how your garden's going to do, and how your trees are going to do.
Right.
We talked about trees last week, and the way that trees react to moisture is interesting to me, or lack of moisture. Because you can see it, and sometimes that's the first place you see that there's a rainfall problem, too much or too little.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I noticed the other day a couple maple trees, that were off in a distance, but you could look up in the tops and you could see the leaves were kind of turned, and you could see the color was off, and you knew they were under stress. And but rains like this will help. It takes a little time. Now, it's not that there's not damage that might be done, because you can get those little fine tree roots that we can't see that are in the soil, creeping and trying to grow and absorb moisture. Those can die. Mm-hmm. So if it gets too dry, we can have problems with that. And a lot of times on something perennial, like a tree, we won't see that response right away. It might be 3 or 6 months, or maybe even a year down the road, that we notice that, there's a dead branch up there, or the leaves aren't, even the following spring when the leaves come out, the leaves aren't as large. Mm-hmm. So that can have lingering. What's happening now can have lingering effects later on.
You often use the word stress when you talk about trees, and when you talk about, I'm looking at an article on Extension about bees right now. Do bees suffer from the heat stress or the dryness? Because we're so concerned about bees now, as we have been for the last 5 or 6 years. Will this year's summer weather and the dryness since the beginning of June, will that affect the bee colony?
Sure, it can have an effect on that. They are affected by conditions that are outside of their normal ranges. So when it gets too hot and too dry, when they don't have nectar and food to forage on, or it's hard to come by, then they have to work harder to find that, right? So yeah, they can get stressed too, and then when they get stressed, then there's other things that can prey on them, such as like varroa mites, and there's some other diseases that can, affect just, like we get stressed when we get outside of our normal conditions. It gets too hot, and we don't drink enough water to replace what we're losing when we respire and sweat. Then we get affected by that. So creatures, same way.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, higher levels of damage to crops this summer due to wildlife, because they are in search of anything with moisture in it.
They're looking for the moisture from the plant leaves.
Right. So they tend to maybe have to go longer distances, farther distances to find something suitable that they can eat. And oftentimes they end up on a farmer's field. And
Yeah. Well, soybean crops are big right now with deer.
yes,
Deer just love soybeans, and I've been noticing the soybean fields out around our area. They seem to be teeming with all kinds of deer.
so the possums and the raccoons and the birds. That's another thing that really can cause a lot of damage. Say the sweet corn, or even field corn. If the ear's starting to develop and there's silk there's moisture in that. So birds will just come in flocks, and they'll land and they'll peck at the tip of the ear.
They'll floss their teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nicely put.
So,
Too bad it ruins the ear.
yeah.
Or
I
it
noticed-
opens it up and exposes that tip of the ear,
Yeah.
and then we can run into other issues.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I noticed birds went hard on my blueberries this year.
yeah, yes.
I don't tent my blueberries or anything like that, and they got after them pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially there's a female cardinal that just loves them. And, the pirates and the cardinals anyway, they're
Yeah.
natural enemies. So me being a Bucko fan, I'm an enemy of the cardinals, but they're pretty birds. So,
Nice to look at.
yeah.
Except when they're destroying, stealing your blueberries. I guess we all have to have something to go around the
you go.
food chain. But
Something else I noticed on Penn State Extension's website earlier this week was an article on cut flowers and how weather can affect them. And we don't think of it this way, but we should. Cut flower is an industry. And
Absolutely
the
is.
flower shops get their flowers from somewhere.
yes,
And the cut flower industry, they're subject to the dry weather as well. And does it cause the flowers to not last as long? Does it cause them to not be as big or as beautiful or colorful?
it can be all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in drier weather, the blooms will last longer. When we have more rainy weather, then the petals will start to decline faster than if things stay dry. And we talk about watering the root system and not the whole foliage of the plant. Especially with tomatoes and vine crops.
My zinnias.
Water's being absorbed through the root system. So if we can keep the plant dry, we're going to keep the plant healthier. So, and then the key there is that we have moisture for those plants to absorb. So flowers are going to do better on a drier year. If we can provide supplemental water, then we might have a great crop of flowers.
Yeah.
To be able to cut flowers and work with that.
Let's take a caller. Good morning.
Good morning to you, too.
What can we do for you?
Our tomatoes are getting like cracks in them. I'm wondering what was causing that.
Tomato.
Weather. So the hot, dry weather. The amount of foliage that you have on that tomato plant. If the fruit are shaded, that's helpful to a degree. If they're really exposed, then they're exposed to the direct sunlight.
They are,
so they heat up more, and then if we get a rain,
Like this morning.
so you get cold rainwater hitting that fruit, that can cause cracking or splitting of the fruit. The dry weather can also, just the drier weather, and that plant, when it's full of fruit, is working very hard to produce that fruit, to make it grow bigger, to mature it. And if the plant's not taking up enough moisture, then we can get that radial cracking up at the stem end, at the top. You can get splitting of that fruit also. So we've had a lot of days in the high 80s, low 90s, a lot of sun, and then coupled with the lack of moisture, that can contribute. There's all kind of physiological issues, which cracking, you can get just a harder skin on the fruit can occur, and we can get some roughness. All those things can be related to somewhat adverse, less than normal weather conditions.
Let me ask him, since he's on
Yes.
the line with us and he's growing tomatoes. Have your tomatoes ripened early?
Oh, they're just starting to ripen right now.
And
It's about on
sometimes,
schedule.
pollination fits into this. A lot of times the first fruit that you get from the plant can be a little bit misshapen. It may not have been fully pollinated, so the seed development may not be complete inside that tomato, and so we can get some misshapen tomatoes, a little bit ugly tomatoes. It's not that they're not good, but they just might not be that nice, beautiful, firm, round, smooth skin and shape. And that can happen from pollination issues early on. Usually we see that with earlier planted tomatoes when we have a little cooler weather. And
So nothing he can do about the cracking of the tomato.
right,
Okay.
that's not at this point.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Bye.
Yep, try to keep them harvested. Oh, also, when you're starting, you may look at the plants and say you can see that there's some fruit ripening on there, and then a lot of it's green, and then a few red ones, and then you go up and you pick that. But the bottom end, and on a year like this, blossom end rot can be very common. So that's where we have, and it may not. We call it a rot. It'll eventually rot. But if that tomato's ripening, looks red ripe, you turn it over, and on the bottom side, there's a gray or an area on the bottom that it's not right.
Yeah.
But that's blossom end rot. Probably going to be very common this year if you're not able to water enough. And you may not see that over the entire crop. It might have been just when certain flower clusters, when they got pollinated and started to develop, if we didn't have enough moisture. And the plant, really, it's an issue with the amount of calcium in the plant and in that fruit as it gets pollinated and starts to develop. So you might be picking those off, and you might, you can still eat the rest of it. Cut that off, and
you'll be good.
it'll go up in the bottom and affect it, but you can still use it.
You can tell the bad
Yes, you can tell the.
part. All right, Bob. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com.
Radio cracking. That was.